The award-winning team of Regan and Scone, known collectively as Cowbutt Crunchies Cosplay, make elaborate and beautiful costumes with layers of intricate detailing. They marry the oldest of old-school techniques with the latest in digital fabrication. Recently, they brought several of their cosplays here to the shop to show off their work, to talk about their design process, and to demonstrate some of their fantastical wig making as well.
Hi everybody, this is Regan and I'm Kelly and we are Cowbutt Crunchies Cosplay.
And today you're joining us for a look at some of our really elaborate cosplay designs, as well as a quick demo of some of our favorite techniques, extreme wig styling,
needlework embellishments,
and also a little bit of talk about what we love to do, which is combining all kinds of mixed materials into amazing detailed costumes.
So something that we love to do when we cosplay is design our own, what we call original cosplays, where we are from a property. These are two costumes that are inspired by anime. Well, I'm from an anime, you're from an anime slash game.
I'm from an anime.
It's an anime, but it's also a game. And we like to take the ideas or creatures or something that isn't necessarily a literal costume from that property, interpret it, think about what is the visual language of that? What are the symbols that are shown? You know, what is the color palette?
And the personality.
The personality, and how do you reinterpret that, redesign that to create something that is totally original, but hopefully very recognizable as a costume. One of the things that's really helpful in designing these original designs that are nonetheless a cosplay is these big interpretive wigs.
That's my specialty. A lot of people ask, how do you make an extreme wig like this? First of all, when I designed these, one of the really fun things about making something so over the top is you can design it yourself. Like in cosplay, there are a lot of anime characters with crazy wigs, but I like to take it a little bit further. And I'll usually focus on maybe one key thing that's important to the character, or maybe the kind of the feel of the show or what that character embodies to me. And then I will make something truly extreme, if you will. What I think of as an extreme wig like this is something that is just so over the top that there is just no way that you can fit one head of hair into this. This just looks so huge and ridiculous and enormous. And this is actually just one wig. The way that I make all of these wigs, though, is we want to volumize it, add a lot more shape and volume by adding something that I like to call understructure. And that could be really anything, honestly. With the two methods that I like to use, for this one, all of that understructure and volume is actually just made with teased up hair. And we can see that it's actually still a little organic and fluffy, kind of like the way that real natural hair would be. This is really fun for like shapes and waves and spikes and things like that. And once we have that teased up structure, we just lay some smooth hair over it so it looks nice and pretty and is like just boop, boop, boop. I really like this for organic things, like this kind of ocean kind of look. However, that doesn't always work. If we need something that's really flat, something that's super cartoony like this, or something that's not going to fall apart over time, instead, you don't have to use hair for that understructure. You could use something like cardboard, something like foam. I've seen people use chicken wire before. You know, the fun thing about cosplay is you can use anything you want. There's no one right way to do it. But, you know, again, just like that one, we're going to make that understructure and then lay nice hair on top of it with some kind of glue or hairspray. Even something really huge like this is perfect for foam work because we've made a huge, huge shape, but it's super lightweight because that's not all hair. But yeah, and if you guys want, I can show you how to make these. So one of the most important things to remember when working with a cosplay wig is that unlike a human hair wig or a professional costuming wig, this is made of plastic. You know, this is not real human hair, and so the way we work with it is actually, I think of it a lot more like when we're working with something like a thermoplastic or foam than if I'm styling my own hair in the morning. And with plastic, what that means is we can use our primary styling tool, which is not actually something like glue or hairspray, but it's going to be heat. You know, plastic, when we heat it up, it becomes soft and malleable, and we can mold it into fun new shapes. So, you know, for instance, if I take this and I want to make it into a nice little curl, we'll just clip it right here and then apply some heat. I like using a steamer on things if I need a really extreme shape because it gets it very, very hot. However, a blow dryer is a lot more accessible and also works perfectly fine for a lot of different types of styles. So we've heated that up. The plastic has become hot and soft. We're going to let it cool off now. You know, again, this is a little different from when we're working with our own human hair. We need the plastic to cool, and then when we pull it out, it's formed a totally different shape. And now this is a very permanent physical hold that's going to stay in the wig a lot longer than something with just glue. So yeah, that is just all by itself wants to stay like that. Now for an extreme wig, we don't necessarily just want to put in some kind of curl. For wigs like this guy, the other wig that we were showing earlier, I like to use something that I call teasing up an understructure. And that understructure is going to give us a lot more volume for something like a spike or a curl or even just a big fluffy wig. You know, if I want to make a spike and I'm not going to volumize it, this hair is really nice and silky and thin, which is great. But if I try and put it out into a spike like this, that's so thin and small, and I don't think that looks good at all. Instead, we want to add a lot more volume and understructure to that hair so that we have a nice, big, fat spike. Now, if anyone has lived to the 80s, you know how to do this. But for those who have not, we're going to back comb the hair a little bit to add that volume. And with the back combing, you can be as messy as you want with this process. We are just introducing a lot of texture into the hair. We're making the hair kind of kinked almost, so there's a lot more air and it can't compress down as much, rather than that nice, straight, silky texture that the wig just comes in when you buy it from the factory. But we're just going to back comb this whole thing, focus on the bottom a little bit because this is a little bit structural. Go all the way up to the top. And there we go. When you back comb the hair, again, we have introduced texture, which, you know, creates more volume. This looks a lot bigger than that straight silky hair was because, you know, all the hair wants to stand off from itself. It's actually almost standing up by itself already, and that's because the hair is also tangled and knotted together. However, the point of this is to add volume, and so we're going to lock that into place, again, by heating it up, softening our plastic, and then we're going to let it cool so that this hair remembers that kinky, volumized texture. So just let it cool for a quick minute. And then I'm actually going to comb this back out. And you might think, well, why are you undoing this work that you just did to the hair? The work that I did was to lock in that very kinky, not straight texture. And, you know, we had back combed it, heated it, and now, even after I comb it through, this hair is a lot less straight and more volumized than what we began with, even though it doesn't have any of those knots in it anymore. You see how much thicker and plump and voluminous this is. This is the understructure that we really want. Usually when I do this process, I like to actually tease it a couple times. Every time you tease, the bigger the hair gets. And then for the final one, we actually want to leave it a little bit teased because the advantage of the back combing is that we can tangle the hair together, lock that shape into place so that it's really permanent. One of the things I find is that if I was to style a wig without doing any kind of manual work to it to lock that shape in, After time, if I just put hairspray in, that's going to fall out. But this kind of physical locking in, this is going to last. And this is going to be permanent, and this is going to be perfect for wearing to a convention. So in this case, here we go. We've tangled the hair together. This was not to volumize because we already did that before, but now it kind of wants to stand up all by itself. A little bit of heat always helps to make sure that that is quite permanent. You can also kind of add a little bit of curl on the end if you are so inclined. And now, finally, we're going to add a little bit of spray, glue. There's all kinds of great products you can use for this. This is really just to make sure that it's really not going anywhere. This is the final touch. A blow dryer is very useful to have when you're applying hairspray. That will instantly firm it up so that it's not going to fall over or go anywhere. And there we go. This is a great, super quick understructure made out of teased up, fluffy hair. I really love this for organic shapes that are supposed to be more natural because they really can kind of still move around like hair. Some people leave it like this. For me personally, though, this is not my favorite texture. What I like to do is I like to leave a little bit of straight hair at the beginning and then lay it on top. If you imagine if we were to kind of surround all of that understructure with our nice straight hair, this part is where glue really comes in handy. Just glue that guy down. Try and get all of the hair if you can. And then lock it in place. Ideally, you also want to give yourself a little more time than 5 minutes, but with enough patience, you can have a really fun, nice wig for your next cosplay.
So one of the things that we really like to do when we're making our cosplays is focus on adding small details into the overall design in a way that really elevates it. This is true of both canonical cosplays based on an existing property or original cosplays where we're designing it ourselves. These can be anything from doing small beadwork, embellishments with thermoplastics, foam, but one of the things that I really like to do personally is a lot of needlework techniques. This includes embroidery, smocking, gold work,
all kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff.
The thing is there's so many different kinds of techniques that you can use when you're doing embellishments or handwork. Like, you know, there's a lot of traditional stuff, but then there's also a lot of non-traditional stuff, or you can do what we like to do and actually combine a lot of these things together to create something that's really unique and, you know, whatever you want to make.
An example of using a technique in an unusual way to make it look much cooler is in Marceline's skirt. What I did was a technique called cut work. Usually with cut work, you're cutting holes in the fabric so that you can see through it and embroidering around the edges. However, what I chose to do was back it in this red fabric and then run it through the embroidery again, giving it a layered effect so the silver is both over the black and over the red, creating this windowed effect that I think makes the architectural elements really pop out, makes it stand in as a super strong visual element of the costume.
I mean, that was nice because you designed it to look kind of like a Gothic cathedral, right? That was her whole shtick.
I actually based it on a real window that I found and then altered a bit. So
yeah, and if you kind of like hold it sideways, you can barely see the extra dimension with how the red is a little recessed in there, but like even back a bit farther away, I think it looks really cool because you just have that extra dimension involved here.
Another great traditional technique, this is like something that you grandmas do for christening gowns and other
that's rude. That's rude to me personally. Call me a grandma.
It's called smocking. And this is a technique where you just use a very simple stitching on a grid pattern, and it creates this very three-dimensional pattern. You can do this as a basket weave, you can make it look like squares, you can make it look like diamonds, and it just really gives it a lot of visual interest. It's not just a panel of color, but it's a panel of texture. It's something different, it draws the eye.
So one thing that may not be obvious is this is one piece of fabric. This is not a lot of little things put together. This is a single piece that has been kind of pulled together, and if you look at the back, it's not very pretty, but you can kind of see how this stitching puffed the fabric out, and that's how we get this kind of really crazy dimension on the front.
And it's really not that hard. Most needlework techniques, once you sort of figure out what they're doing, they're really not that difficult. Smocking in particular is, it's really simple. It takes a long time, but it's really simple. You would start with a piece of fabric marked out with a grid like this. This is marked in chalk on inch wide, and you can see I've drawn diagonals where my stitching would be. All you really have to do then is not tangle your thread, but you start with a stitch, you follow the diagonal line that's marked in the chalk, you pick it up, and then you pull it tight. And it creates that puff. And this puff doesn't really look very interesting right now. Most needlework techniques, it's not like spray paint where you're gonna get 3 seconds of work in and it's a high impact. But if you keep going, you do another stitch, you pull that one tight too, it starts to create, more of a pattern. So you do it over and over and over again. You do each stitch and it creates,
after you do it, 300, 500, 1,000 times, you've created a lot of these really interesting textual pieces.
This is a trapunto, which is a type of quilting. You would start with your lines all stitched out. This was stitched on an embroidery machine, but you could do it by hand. And I stitched all my patterns. There's 2 layers of fabric here. There's a stretch fabric, and then there's a heavy backing fabric. And then what I did was I went in behind it and I put a little bit of stuffing, just regular polyfill, polyester quilting. Well, this isn't even for quilting. This is for like stuffed animals.
Yeah, well, I think this is for
stuffed animals.
Well, who cares? We're using it for this.
Yeah, we're using it for this. And that creates this really three-dimensional shape. You can emphasize the shape by adding even more thread on top of it to really make the elements puff. And then you cover it with embroidery floss, just back and forth, and it creates this very three-dimensional, very shiny, interesting. Now, could you paint this? Absolutely. Could you make it out of foam? Sure. You could even embroider it flat, but I think the combination of the traditional techniques, the trapunto, the embroidery, the gold work, really adds a lot of dimension and a lot of interest to what is a relatively small piece.
So this is 3 different things, right?
Yes, this is 3 things. So there's the stuffing, there's the embroidery, and then there's what's called gold work, which is where you use these very small tubes of stretchy metal. They're usually metallic gold work, but you can get them in other colors, and you add them as emphasis or dimensional, just decoration along the stitching lines, and it creates. So even a piece this small, you can combine traditional techniques, you can combine needlework techniques to create something that's really original and creative. When you're doing needlework, another thing to think about is materials. What kind of materials do you want to do for your embellishments? One of the materials that that I love is lace. Lace.
Got lace on everything.
Lace. I love lace. I think it's beautiful. I think it's a great material for all kinds of costumes. And so I really wanted to learn how to make lace. And the way that you make lace, going back hundreds of years.
It takes a long time.
It's a very traditional art, is bobbin lace.
You don't see this a ton with cosplay, but I feel like it's coming back.
I think more cosplayers are going to get into it. I think cosplayers are interested in these old techniques. I'm interested, at least. Yeah. Bobbin lace is, as you might have guessed, making lace using bobbins. And the way that you do that is you have several pairs of bobbins. For this pattern, I have a lot of pairs of bobbins. But it's really simple, just like all the other needlework techniques. You know, the steps to do it are very simple, but then it takes
finesse
a lot of
and
patience and finesse. And it's very simple. You just cross bobbins, pull it tight.
And then the tension makes the lace, right?
You stick a pin in it. And then as you keep braiding it down and crossing them over with each other, it essentially knots it down the line of the lace until you have a strip. And your lace, I mean, you can make it look however you want because you can get lots of patterns, but for this lace, you have something a little bit like that. And it needs to be
How long did
pressed.
this take you?
This took me 6 Dungeons and Dragons sessions to do, because that's when I do it.
At 3 hours each, this is 18 hours of work.
This is 18 hours of lace.
And you have how much more of this to do for Marcy?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
You don't have to go out to learn how to make your own lace by hand. The idea is more about, instead of always chasing the next technology, always going for the newest materials with the laser cutters and the resin printer. I don't know what I'm talking about. I have no idea. Don't be afraid to look at more traditional, more old-fashioned techniques, and instead of writing them off as like, oh, well, this isn't applicable to me, think about how you could incorporate those in new and creative ways. Maybe smocking isn't for you, but maybe the idea of folding your material around and creating texture like that, you can interpret that in a new way.
Or maybe, you know, even if none of those techniques really appeal to you, don't be afraid to combine things together, you know, either in one little piece or in your whole costume. That's so much, I think, about what our personal style is with costuming and cosplay and, you know, just creating art, is being very open to creating all kinds of things, original designs, mixing media, and just really making this really fun hobby our own and something that is uniquely us. And, you know, I really hope that this show and tell has kind of gotten you a little inspired, and maybe one of you will go out and create your own unique costume similar to this. If you want to find more of our work, you can find us on all kinds of social media under the name Cowbutt Crunchies. You can also find some of our books online, tutorials, and more of this crazy stuff that we love making.
Thank you so much for coming and talking about cosplay with us.